Yes, what's happening, people? What's happening, folks? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Gunner's Corner with another video, another update video. And this one is going to be around Kai Havertz and the Kai Havertz dilemma. Again, it's your boy CJ from the Gunner's Corner, so make sure you stay locked in with us. Like and subscribe, as we always say. Hype the video as it really, really does help us out these days. And yeah, stay locked in, people. Subscribe to the channel because we got a lot of content that's continuing to roll on as the season comes to its conclusion. And obviously, we'll be here throughout the summer with the World Cup and so on and so forth. And if you'd missed it, episode 100 is out with myself, Laurent, and Murdad. It was quite a fiery one off the back of our loss yesterday to Manchester City, the 2-1 loss. Quite a fiery one between the three of us. And obviously, Chelsea, Laurent being a Chelsea fan, and basically anti-Arsenal had a lot to say, and we rebutted quite well. So go check that out. It's on the channel. But yeah, we're here just quickly because I've been thinking about this ever since the game concluded against Man City, and I've been thinking about, what went wrong, in the 2-1 loss, and where could we have improved, and what could we generally improve to maybe still salvage the season, and what we can do long term, right? It's all about the long term solutions, and we have to look at a couple key personnel. And I'm calling I'm calling this video the Kai Havertz dilemma, essentially, because it is a dilemma that we have with him, Kai Havertz, right? And now yesterday, most people going into yesterday, even, all week long, the conversation has been around who starts up top, Kai Havertz or Victor Gyökeres. And most of us said we wanted Kai Havertz to start ahead of the Man City game, myself included. Right? I said for Kai Havertz to start. The reason I said for Kai Havertz to start up top is because Kai Havertz has better ball retention than Victor Gyökeres. He's definitely more intelligent with his movement, as we saw yesterday. More intelligent with his movement up top is Kai Havertz. Invade space, as we laugh at him about it when he first signed, but he is very good at finding space, getting into his pockets of space, creating space for himself. The movement off the ball, off the shoulder of the defender, is better than Gyökeres. Kai Havertz has very high IQ as a footballer. I'll never discredit his IQ and his intelligence and the way he can maneuver bits of space around the pitch. Kai Havertz does that really well. And then obviously his hold-up play, right? The ball retention. Like I said, more often than not, and we saw it in the cup final against Man City in the Carabao Cup final. We don't, first of all, we don't use Gyökeres the right way because he's not a hold up play type of striker, right? We can't ask him to play with his back to goal, hold it up and link other players into play and bring other players into play. Kai Havertz can do that well, but not Gyökeres. He's more of a get the ball to him early and behind, have him running off the shoulder of the defender, you get the ball to him early. He's not really great with the slow build up, Gyökeres, because his link up play isn't the greatest. But for Kai Havertz, again, in a game like this, right? We're playing Man City, who is going to constantly be coming at us, creating high chances around our box and play a lot of the game in our third, when we need an outlet, right? And so if, like I said, when we saw this in the cup final as well, if Gyökeres is our outlet and we're clearing the ball up to Gyökeres or trying to play it into his feet, he loses a lot of his aerial duels or his battles with the center back, right? When it becomes a wrestling match between Gyökeres and the defender, if he's not running in behind, but rather has his back to goal or whatever the case may be, then he loses out on those. Gyökeres often finds himself on the floor, or his first touch is poor if he gets it to feet, or his first touch is decent, but then he tries to make that pass and then plays it out of bounds. We've seen that on a number of occasions from Gyökeres. He can be frustrating with when it comes to just giving us an outlet and holding the ball up and relieving some pressure when we make our way up the pitch if we clear our lines. And so it was always of the impression that Kai Havertz was going to be better suited to a game like this, right, against Man City, where, he'll hold it up for us on the outlet, give us a little bit of a breather on transition. And so, yeah, it was proven right with most of us who analyzed it, a lot of us who analyzed it ahead of the game and who saw it that way was pretty much obviously how Mikel Arteta saw it, right? Because Mikel Arteta started Kai Havertz. And there's no doubt in my mind, if Kai Havertz was fit and available for more of this season, Kai Havertz would have been starting a lot more games, and he would have been starting a lot more of the big games, to be honest with you. I said this from the beginning of the season. I said Gyökeres, I don't think was Kai Havertz, sorry. Gyökeres was not Mikel Arteta's main ideal striker signing. That's just my opinion. I still think that was more Berta pressing that situation. I think maybe if Edu was still in charge or whoever else was still in charge, maybe Arteta would have tried to hold off for a different striker, maybe a Sesko, right? Yeah, I know Sesko was high on the list, but I do believe Berta helped push forward the Gyökeres signing and influence Arteta and whoever else to get that signing over the line. Obviously, because we needed a striker, a proven gunman striker. Um, so I think that was what happened with the Okra signing. I still to this day do not believe that that was Arteta's man through and through. I don't think that would have been first choice on Arteta's list. Anyways, we are here now. And that being said, is like I said, if Havertz was more fit and more available this season, I think Havertz would be playing, or would have been playing more up top, to be honest with you. And Gyökeres would be, we would see more instances like what we saw yesterday, where Gyökeres is on the bench, Havertz is starting up top, certainly in the bigger games, right? Obviously now Kai Havertz is back, and it's good that he's available for the run-in, or somewhat available. We're not sure what his fitness levels are like, but he's here, he's playing. He played yesterday and started yesterday and had a mixed game, Havertz, right? And this is where we start talking about the Kai Havertz dilemma. He's a very good, intelligent footballer, is Kai Havertz, with good IQ, decent vision, good link-up play, and like I said, intelligent movement and invasion of space when it comes to getting about the pitch and finding areas to create space for himself and make himself available. And obviously he's a bit of a versatile player, right? He can play the number nine, the false nine, number 10, even deeper in midfield at times. Now, jack of all trades, master at none, some might say, right? He plays all those at a decent level. He's not super exceptional in any of those, let's say, right? He's not super exceptional as a center forward. And he's not Iniesta in midfield, let's say, you know what I mean? Like he's good, he's functional, and he's a good squad versatile option. And I think his best position is as a second striker, right? Just in behind the main striker or like a high, number 10 cam, CAM attacking mid sort of thing. But yeah, just like I said, just a functional player and functional squad player. And I believe that's what he should be for Arsenal Football Club at best, is a functional squad player. If Kai Havertz is a player that you have to rely on, that's where I think we are in trouble because for all of his good qualities, again, he lacks in certain departments and the way we use him, right? We use him in his best position for us right now, and the system that we play is as a main number nine. That's probably where he showed his best form for Arsenal Football Club is playing as a nine. However, he does not score enough goals or he misses massive chances in big important games for him to be considered our main number nine going forward, which is why we had to replace or add an additional striker in a Victor Gyökeres. And if the fan base and the Arsenal surroundings have been calling for another striker to come in for a few windows now, because we realize that whilst Kai Havertz is good, he can't be the main man and he can't be the main guy. Because he just simply is not clinical enough. And we saw that yesterday in the Man City game, right? He scored the goal. He did well to get his goal. He pressed high. He pressed Donnarumma and scored. That was all down to his good work. But the chances that he missed in this game were arguably easier, sorry, than the goal that he scored. Right? That press. Make no mistake about it. That ability to press and to squeeze Donnarumma and to recognize that early. Right? That's a lot of hard running. You have to be switched on for that. You get yourself there. He fully earned that goal with the work that he did for that. But the chances that he missed in this game were easier than that goal that he fashioned for himself, right? I'll start off with the header. It's the second of the two big chances of the game, but starting off with the header in the 90th minute that went over the bar, that's your bread and butter. You're 6'4". The delivery was perfect from Trossard, right? The whip on the ball, the trajectory of the ball, the pace on the ball, it was perfect. He's unmarked, Kai Havertz in the box. You get that down, either side of the keeper, it's a goal, right? How you miss from there as a professional footballer on almost 300 grand a week, right? Almost 300 British pounds a week he's on, one of the highest paid players in the club. How you miss that from there as a professional footballer in that situation, I'll never know. It's inexcusable. It's inexcusable, right? And it's not the first time we've seen that from him. And then obviously the one-on-one in the earlier in the second half, right before Holland made it 2-1, we had a couple good chances, obviously. The Eze one, and then Kai Havertz himself had another one. And the Kai Havertz chance that he had earlier on in the second half that I'm referring to is, you know, we I think we dispossessed Mark Gahey, so we broke in midfield. Eze had the ball, plays it to Martin Odegaard. Odegaard drives through midfield, plays it to his left where Kai Havertz is. Maybe yes, Odegaard's pass could have been a little bit better, a little bit more straight, and instead it sends the Havertz a little bit wider. But Havertz should still do better from there with that position. You're in on Donnarumma's goal. All you got to do is just put it back where it came from. Put it across Donnarumma. Instead, he shoots it right at Donnarumma. We saw him do this in the cup final when he hit it right at Trafford. in the Carabao Cup final in our early chance in the first half of that game, pretty much our only clear-cut chance, one of our only clear-cut chances of that game, in the cup final against Trafford. First few minutes, hits it right at Trafford when Kai Havertz should do better. Open up your body and put that in the bottom corner. We saw Kai Havertz miss chances last season against Newcastle, famously in our Carabao Cup semi-final that was against Newcastle. We lost to Newcastle over two legs. And it's particularly at the Emirates, Kai Havertz missed some big chances, wide open goal, similar to the game yesterday where, Kai Havertz, I remember famously, I think it was in the first leg against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup last season. Kai Havertz has a header in the box, and it's the goal is asking to be scored, right? Ball comes in, it hits off of his shoulder instead of his head, hits off of his shoulder and goes just wide past the keeper's post. He got it all wrong, Kai Havertz. Hits his shoulder, goes out wide when it's a clear header that should be easily in the back of the net. One of many chances he missed in that game at the Emirates against Newcastle in that Carabao Cup semi-final last year. Again, missing clear-cut chances in against Manchester United in the FA Cup last season. In that I think first round exit that we lost to Man U again at the Emirates as well. Kai Havertz missing chances in that one. This is last season. And there's numerous others you can go through, right? But I'm talking about some of these more high pressure games, right? Cup games, yesterday title race. These games where this is where you pay your main guys the big bucks for, right? To get you through in high stakes, high pressure games. This is what the big players stand up and be counted for, right? Putting the ball in the back of the net, converting when the pressure is on. And it's weird because you've seen Kai Havertz do it. You've seen Kai Havertz score in Champions League finals to win Chelsea a Champions League, funny enough. You saw the goal that he scored against Sporting Lisbon through Martinelli's assist not too long ago, right? A few weeks ago, the first leg in Portugal and against Sporting Lisbon in the quarterfinals of the Champions League for us, the one and only goal that sent us through to the semifinal, essentially. Um, Kai Havertz scored a brilliant goal. The way he took it in the box, first touch beautiful, second touch finish as the keeper's coming out. He has that in his locker, right? He has these. Sometimes he'll score some brilliant goals, some very well taken goals with a good touch, good technique, composure, and then finish. But then other times, like yesterday, he just loses all composure. And sometimes in games, when he gets a few big chances, like it's not like he just misses one. He'll miss two or three big chances in the same game. And you're wondering what the hell's going on. And this is supposed to be our main guy. This is our number nine. This is the guy that does all the things right in terms of link up play, in terms of, like I said, movement and intelligent and creating space for himself as well as creating space for others. Some good passes on his accord as well. Like he knows how to thread a pass. Like I said, albeit not Fabregas Iniesta type passes, but Kai Havertz is competent playing with the ball at his feet. And we've seen him slip through Havertz. Sorry, we've seen him slip through Gyökeres and other players with intelligent passes and just the vision, the ability to see the field. And he can play some decent passes through the lines and play balls early and behind the defense. Can Havertz. So for all the other functions of the game that he does well, it's his finishing that just still lets us down. And like I said, for some of the good goals that he does score, I can't ride on the fact that he scored that goal against Sporting for us forever. That goal a few weeks ago that he scored in Portugal. It's a great goal, but I need to know what you're doing for me lately. I'm not going to keep riding on the past of, so you score certain goals here and there, but you miss too many in big moments, right? Yesterday is a massive game for us, and we could have easily been sitting here today saying, decent point, right? Decent draw at the Etihad, or dare I say, good win at the Etihad when we were 1-1 and he had that chance against Donnarumma, like I mentioned, where he's in on goal and hits it right at him. We could be sitting here with a completely different picture and complete control of the title race if he converts. And again, funny enough, in the same game, he's the reason why we were level anyways when he made it 1-1 with all his hard work and endeavor to press. But later in the game, you missed two big chances, and it's like, dude, like not for the first time. It's just a familiar pattern with him. He's just not clinical, and he's our main number nine, right? That's my problem. He's our main number nine. I mean, yes, you can say Gyökeres is as well, but as I said, in Arteta's eyes, right? I think that Kai Havertz would very much be first choice. If there's a Champions League final tomorrow, I would argue that Kai Havertz would start. Um, so And it's just with an effort to need to get Kai Havertz in the team because Arteta, let's be honest, Kai Havertz is Arteta's guy. Like Arteta loves Kai Havertz from day one, from he first signed from day one up until now. The way Arteta speaks about Kai Havertz in the press conferences, he always is very highly, complimentary of Kai Havertz, and he appreciates Kai Havertz's game, and he appreciates Kai Havertz as a player and as a person. So that's definitely one of Arteta's favorites, which again leads to another problem, which is that, you know, he has 2 years left on his deal now, right? His deal is set to expire. So let me read this here. Kai Havertz's contract with Arsenal is currently set to expire June 30th, 2028, right? He signed a long-term deal upon joining from Chelsea in July 2023, and as of early 2026, reports suggest Arsenal are in talks to extend his contract further, indicating he's a key part of their long-term plans. Now that is a problem for me because again, Kai Havertz was signed as a midfielder. This is where the problem is, right? It's not just the fact that, we still maybe don't know his best position or, his finishing. It's also his wages that he's on. One of the highest paid players of the club. I think before Saka signed his big long-term deal, Kai Havertz might have been the highest paid player in the club with, like I said, earning near 300,000 British pounds per week. So any big player, any new player that comes to the club, they're going to look at that and say, "Oh, one of your top earners, Kai Havertz. What's this guy really done for you?" But he's one of your highest paid players. Um, I want his wages. I'm better than him. I'm more important than him. You know, I want his wages, if not higher. Right. And there's no doubt, again, 2024 title run in, the last title race we were in against Man City, Kai Havertz was pivotal to that. He was crucial, scored some good goals, played very well, right? But we're in 2026 now, and we still haven't won the league with Kai Havertz in the team as our main guy. And he's proven that, like I said, as a striker, if that's what we're going to use him, he misses too many big chances for all the other good things that he does. Because Giroud did a lot of good things for us in terms of linking up play, and he had high IQ as a footballer, and he had a good touch, right? But Giroud wasn't clinical enough. So, and we're looking at a similar situation with Kai Havertz. So Arsenal's number nine needs to be someone clinical. You look at Man City, you look at the guy who won the game for them yesterday, none other than Erling Haaland. That is a clinical striker. He doesn't need too many touches in a game. Right, and then obviously there's a whole other question to be had about maybe we change our game model to get the best out of a clinical striker because let's be honest, we have a clinical striker in Gyökeres. So maybe we adapt our game model, right? But that's a whole other story for another day. That Arteta's system doesn't get the best out of maybe forward players or players like Gyökeres. So that's a whole other issue for another day. But with the Kai Havertz thing, if we're talking about it here and now, right? He's not clinical enough. And my fear is that is he gonna continue to cost us in big games if he starts as the main number nine? And the game state matters, right? Horses for courses. We need Kai Havertz to start in certain games. I have no regrets about saying Kai Havertz should have started yesterday's game. But the problem is, for all the good work that he does, off the ball stuff, on the ball stuff, in the box, right, or as a finisher, when it comes to being potent, he's still, years later, we're seeing he still doesn't have that. He unpredictable. Sometimes he'll score bangers, he'll score worldies, and other times he'll miss wide open amateur goals. You know, and so 2 years left on his contract this summer. Um, Talks of him getting a new contract, but should he get a new contract in your eyes, people? Should Kai Havertz get a new contract? Because, if he's going to be considered a main guy in this team, where does he fit in our best team? He was signed as a midfielder initially. Let's be honest. Let's tell it how it is. He was signed as a midfielder, right? The summer that he was signed with Declan Rice and Yuri Timber, our midfield was supposed to be reshaped where Declan Rice was the six, Kai Havertz was supposed to be, that left eight midfield channel player, and obviously Odegaard in the right eight. That was supposed to be our midfield three, after the evolution of the Thomas Partey, Xhaka, and Odegaard midfield from 22-23, which to this day I argue has been our best midfield under Arteta. The well-balanced midfield had everything. That Partey, Xhaka, and Odegaard. That's when Odegaard was at his best. Obviously, he's tailed off. Since then, we have not gotten the best out of our midfield dynamic to this day. And again, after changing up that midfield when Xhaka left, Arteta's new vision of the midfield was Kai Havertz in that left eight. You can't tell us otherwise. That's how he started him, and we soon after saw that Kai Havertz in that left eight position did not work. I know we try him in midfield now every now and then, but that's more for maybe out of desperation. Obviously, Mikel Merino's been injured, so we need rotation, we need options. But obviously, that's not our go-to midfield today. Our go-to midfield today is Zubimendi, Rice, and maybe Odegaard or Eze or whatever. But Kai Havertz in midfield is not our main go-to today because I think, and I hope Arteta has realized that Kai Havertz in midfield in that left eight position does not work. We tried it for a number of games. It did not work. Has not worked. Hasn't gotten us anywhere, you know. And so, yeah, it's so when you sign a player of that stature for 65 million M's and on, close to 300 grand a week in wages, and your midfield solution for him, or your initial midfield position for him does not work. We're not Man City or Chelsea where we can just say, spend that kind of money and spend those kind of wages and say, it's okay, we'll go out and when, we'll either sell him or get rid of him or bin him and get a new player in. We have to, we don't do that. That's not how we operate. So we have to somehow try and make that work. And how Arteta's managed to make him work is put him up top. So he's a failed midfielder converted into a number nine. So his best position at our Arsenal Football Club is playing as a number nine in the system that we play. And again, however, he is not clinical enough to be our main number nine. He does all this great work, but he is not clinical enough to be Arsenal's main number nine for the long-term future. Does he start in Arsenal's best team in midfield? No, he doesn't. So does he start in Arsenal's best team going forward as a number nine? Most would argue he doesn't. Most people would still say Gyökeres should be the main number nine. And I can't lie. You buy a striker who's clinical. That's what a striker is supposed to do. Let's go back to basics for a second. You buy a striker to put the ball in the back of the net. If Gyökeres does that better than Havertz, then Gyökeres should be the starting striker, right? You would think. The idea scenario is I wish we had a mold of both, right? That's when you're just world class. The Thierry Henry's in that, right? Somebody who has Kai Havertz intelligence and touch and flair and finesse and hold up play, and footballing IQ and ability to link up play. Combine that with Gyökeres' clinical finishing. You mold those two strikers together, you have a Thierry Henry, for example, right? But how many of those can you get nowadays? A Thierry Henry. So that's the problem that we have, ladies and gentlemen, is that Kai Havertz was signed on big wages for a big transfer fee, signed as a midfielder, failed in midfield. So we put him up top, and now he's been playing up top in his best position in this current team. But is he even good enough up top as Arsenal's number nine to be the long-term number nine that brings us to all types of trophy success? Not just now, going forward, to keep the dynasty going, right? To keep the group going, and not just to win one or two fluke trophies this year. And I say fluke, you don't fluke a Premier League or a Champions League. Maybe you can fluke a Champions League, but you know what I mean, right? Like you can maybe win something this season with him starting up top, but like, is it sustainable, right? Is it something that we can do long term where we're happy with Kai Havertz as our main number nine going forward? Or are we just going to continue to be frustrated with him? Is he going to continue to divide opinion up top? Is he going to continue to flatter to deceive? We don't want that. We want a permanent, just like we for our left wing, the summer needs replacing. We want a permanent number nine solution, a full-time number nine solution that we're all happy with, that we can all say, yeah, I'm confident and I can trust that when he's going through on goal in the Champions League final, 9 times out of 10, he's going to score that. With Kai Havertz, you just don't know. For all the good work that he does, just like Giroud, all the good work that they did, not clinical when it counts, and those are what cost you in big games and in cup finals. And we've seen it time and time again. And we saw it in yesterday's game. It was a title decider, essentially, potentially. And Kai Havertz scored a goal in that game, unconventional one. But when it comes to the clear bread and butter strikers, poachers, finishes, he missed and missed badly. Two other big chances. And can you afford to have a number nine for a title winning team that is not clinical enough, even though they can link up play and do these other things? That's the problem that we have. And then at that point, what do you do with Kai Havertz? Do you continue to keep that guy? Because again, if he doesn't start in our midfield, right? Failed midfield signing turned striker. If he doesn't start in your midfield and then you put him up top and he doesn't necessarily start up top because he's not clinical enough, and then he's on your bench collecting 300K a week almost on your bench. Again, we're not Man City. Can we afford to have a guy who's earning almost 300K a week sitting on the bench as a bench player, as a rotation option week in, week out? Or do you cash in on him now, right? 2 years left on his deal, right? 2 years left on his deal. He expires 2028, as I said, June 2028. Is this the summer to cash in on him? I would argue, you can argue both ways, but I would argue yes. I would argue that, if there's a good offer that comes in for him, Listen, I'm happy to keep him because like I said, he's a good squad player. But where we messed up is we gave him too high wages to keep him as a squad player, in my opinion. That's just going to hamstring us for other signings that will come in. We don't want an inflated wage bill, right? So the Kai Havertz situation, I like him. I appreciate him as a player. I appreciate him as a squad player for us. But for Arsenal Football Club, we just can't afford to have too many players. We need to be careful on putting a bunch of players because that's the president that's set. Kai Havertz on near 300K a week. So new players that we may want to buy this summer and bring in of high caliber, can we afford to have all these players on such high wages and some of them like Kai Havertz are just holding the bench or rotation options or squad players? I fear we're not Man City or PSG or Real Madrid or Chelsea to be able to do that. And so the question becomes, again, for a player who is a good functional squad player for us, but is not a guaranteed starter because he doesn't start in midfield and because he's not necessarily, a clinical number nine up top, when we're looking at the likes of Julian Alvarez and whatnot, potentially, right? Those rumors are out there that we're looking for another new striker in the summer who is of the highest quality, like a Julian Alvarez. Kai Havertz is, what do you do with Kai Havertz then? Again, a high profile player with high wages just sitting on your bench. If we can afford to do it, you talk about extending his contract. Sure, what kind of contract are you going to extend to? But I fear that we just don't operate like that, And we're talking about sacrificial lambs having to sell and get rid of certain players in order to, fund new world-class players potentially coming through or new high caliber players coming through. Maybe you look at a Kai Havertz as a sacrificial lamb. And if he's going to continue just to be a squad option, that would have been fine if he's on half the wages that he's on now. But as one of your top two, three highest paid players in the club for a squad player, his role in the team will continue to decrease and diminish if we're going to continue to elevate as a club and sign better players. You may have to just look to cash in on him this summer. So that's the dilemma we have with Kai Havertz. He's good. We like him. He's a good functional player, but we don't want to see him in midfield anymore. That experiment didn't work. And up top, is he clinical enough? Do we see him as a guy who's gonna give us the goals that we need to get us over the line in the highest of caliber games? Can we trust him in his finishing as good as he is at all the other things? That's the debate we have, and then the dilemma we have, and the dilemma we have could be solved in the summer if we decide what direction we want to go with him. And the main thing you would think to be, again, if we're using a sacrificial lamb, if we're trying to be business savvy and smart, it may be wise to cash in on Kai Havertz this summer. Sometimes you just have to cut your losses, right? We're ruthless in some areas. We did it with Ramsdale. We did it, with obviously our Smith Rose and that, like, the sentimental value. Kai Havertz, is loved by Arteta, but sometimes you just have to cut your losses and go again to fund for the greater good. Again, sentimental value, right? Sentimental connection to the club with when it comes to Man City. Joe Hart was the number one for the longest time at City. They loved him there, but he got binned for a better keeper at that time, right? I think it was under Pep. Um, we saw the evolution of the goalkeeper there. Joe Hart, who would have thought about replacing him at the time, but they had to level up and they had to improve. And they needed a keeper who can play with the ball at their feet. So they had to get rid of Joe Hart. So we see this happen all the time, right? So we love Kai Havertz. This is no diss on him. But again, you got to look to elevate and to grow, and you got to make some sacrifices along the way. So let's see what happens this summer. For now, Kai Havertz is here. And we still gotta use him the best way we can. And for him, the way we use him from now to the end of the season, Kai Havertz is a horses for courses scenario, depending on the game state, depending on who we're playing, right? So, for example, like a Burnley at home, or now, funny enough, we need goals. We need goals because our title race now has now gone down to a shootout, right, between us and City. If we'll both win all five games, the league could be one off goal difference. So now we need to start scoring goals. So funny enough, Burnley's at home, and that you're going to want to play a Gyökeres because somebody who's actually clinical, and we need goals and we need a fox in the box. So you may want to play a Gyökeres in those scenarios. But in other scenarios, like I said, if we get to a Champions League final, or if we're playing a superior team like a Bayern Munich or a PSG who's going to dominate and cause us a lot of problems, sometimes we may need an outlet when we're up against it, and somebody like Havertz who can hold the ball up and whatnot. So this is it. It's a horses for courses scenario between now until the end of the season. I think the midfield experiment. There's no more FA Cup games or Carabao Cup games or games to throw away. Every game is important from now to the end of the season. So, whilst we saw Kai Havertz in midfield in those cup games, I don't think we're going to see that and should see that again. Now Kai Havertz is either, going to play up top or on the bench. That's what it is. Rotation up top with Gyökeres, courses for course, depending on the game state. So let me know what you guys think about Kai Havertz. Should he be sold in the summer with 2 years left on his contract? Because this summer is the only real summer we can get value from him if we sell. Should he be sold this summer? Should we keep him and give him a new contract? Where's his best position? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But this has been CJ from the Gunners Corner. Like, share, and subscribe, as we always say, and we'll see you guys on the next one. I'm out. Bye bye.